Hello and welcome back to the Vally of Shadows Paranormal Podcast. I am your host, Matt, and I'm glad to be back. I've known it's been a while since I've uploaded another video on here, but let's get to it. This will be another one out of the book of the Ghost of the Rio Grande Valley. This one will be the Wailing Woman of San Benito. Pretty much the La Llorona. It's a pretty well-known story around here. Let's get into it. The Wailing Woman of San Benito. The history. Straddling a jade green oxbow lake between Brownsville and Harlingen on US Highway 77 and 83, San Benito occupies the very center of Cameron County. Like many communities in the Rio Grande Valley, the town has its origins in a tract of land appointed by the Spanish crown. In this case, the Concepcion de Corritos land grant awarded by King Charles IV to Bartholomew and Eugenio Fernandez in 1789. In the mid-19th century, Judge Stephen Powers provided legal services to the Fernandez family, receiving a sizable slice of the grant in payment. Upon his death in 1882, his son-in-law James Landrum and Benjamin Hicks were named administrators of his estate. 22 years later, they teamed up with a railroad developer, Sam Robertson, to establish what would come to be called the San Benito Land and Water Company. In January 1907, the company carved its bit of the Carritos grant up into lots and began selling. With an eye towards funding a town, after the men had tried out a few names, an employee of Hicks named Rafael Moreno came up with San Benito. By combining Robert's first name, Sam, which is reduced to San, with Don Benito, a respectful Spanish version of Hicks' nickname, Benny. Several places in San Benito are purportedly haunted. One of the most popular in the old abandoned San Benito High School, built in 1930. The school served briefly as a hospital during World War II. Locals swear, late at night, the screams of the wounded and dying can be heard, echoing down those empty halls. The campus was later renamed Berter Cabeza Middle School before finally closing in 1998. And neighbors claim that lights flicker on and off and a uniformed old ghost patrols the routing structure. At times, the gym is suddenly filled with the sounds of students playing basketball and laughing. Some have witnessed phantoms of a little girl who died on the grounds wandering beneath the full moon crying softly. Even these ghastly apparitions, however, pale in comparison to the wailing figure that haunts the broad and beautiful Oxbow Lake that ripples with deceptive serenity at the center of town. Alright, there's a little bit of history there. Now let's get into the lore. The legend of La Llorona, or Weeping Woman, has been widely told in numerous variations. It is an ancient tale with roots in the beliefs of the pre-Columbian Nahuas, that collection of interrelated tribes now termed Aztec. Two sorts of apparitions seemed likely sources. First are the Chihuahua, or the divine woman, fierce spirits of mothers who died during childbirth, considered fallen warriors by Aztecs. They accompanied the sun as it descended each day into the underworld, protecting it from attacking forces. Their single-minded aggression, however, made it dangerous for people to encounter them at the crossroads at night, when they might attempt to steal children or seduce men whom they would then drive mad. Also, evocative of the Weeping Woman is the Zahualcalto, or the Maiden Wind, a type of specter that wandered the night, kneeling beneath the stars. It is possible that the modern Llorona legend has been influenced by a myth concerning the goddess Chihuahua, who lived at the bottom of Lake Texcoco. The Aztecs believed, appearing at night as a woman dressed in white. She was, according to the Chronicles of Time, the harbinger of the conquest of Mexico. A woman's voice was reportedly heard crying out, "Oh, my children, their destruction has arrived, for we must soon depart." Other times, the voice would cry in desperation, "My children, where shall I take you?" The Spanish conquest of Mexico added new nuances to the old myth. The Spanish conquistador Cortez was aided immensely by the native woman christened Dona Marina, better known as La Malinche. After her death, it was said that she was truly La Llorona, returning to grief for her having betrayed her own race by helping the foreigners to achieve domination of the Aztec Empire. Colonial storytellers shaped these disparate elements into a tale of tragic love and despair that highlighted the class of differences between indigenous peons and Spanish aristocrats. The core story spread throughout Mexico and has lingered in the southern west. Nearly every town near a body of water has its own version. San Benito is no exception. Alright, and there's a little bit of the lore for you there and where all this might stem from. Now, let's get into the legend. In the first decade of the 20th century, on the outskirts of the new established town of San Benito, the poor Batista family struggled as many had before and have since. The mother died giving birth to her sixth child, leaving the eldest daughter, Daphne, to help her father by taking on the role and raising her young sisters and brothers. She never once complained, and although she of course felt betrayed at times by the injustice of life, she seldom let her emotions distract her from her duties. She was generally a very good person, a bit short-tempered, but kind to her family and neighbors, and generous with all. Despite her poverty, she displayed the haughty beauty of a princess. Daphne, light-skinned and hazel-eyed, had a long, most luxurious hair of all women in the neighborhood, and was the result of envy of them all. To help make ends meet, Daphne took on laundry work, hauling loads of clothes on the family burro down to the Resaca de los Fresnos, an oxbow lake with placid waters that served as a sort of irrigation canal. It was on the banks of this Resaca that she was spotted one day by Lawrence Woods, a young Texas Ranger deployed to the Rio Grande Valley as part of a company defending against incursions from a Mexico in the grips of Revolutionary War. When Lawrence laid eyes on the girl, he was smitten at once. He tried to exchange a few words with her, but she rejected his advances. Compelled much by her upbringing as by the ethnic and class divides in her community, Lawrence, undaunted, drew away and waited for her to finish her labor. He then followed her home, and heedless of the poverty she lived in, decided that she would be his wife, no matter who objected. He began courting her, and despite the initial reservations of her father, Don Hilario Bautista, most of Daphne's family warmed to the idea of their betrothal. Not only because the nuptials would improve their lot in life, but also because they genuinely liked Lawrence. Daphne's 13-year-old brother, Ovidio, had become obsessed with the ideals of Velista guerrillas who were carrying out raids in the valley. To him, Anglos along the Rio Grande were usurpers, and he was disgusted at the thought of his sister marrying a gringo, a member of the Rinches, or Texas Rangers, who so oppressed Mexicans on the U.S. side. "You're all traitors," he shouted at his family, "especially you, Daphne. Look at how those jackboots are arresting and even killing innocent people just because they speak Spanish." "Don't be ridiculous," she argued. "Not all Rangers are bad. Certainly not Lawrence. You've seen how sweet he is with all the little ones, Ovidio. It is just a trick, you'll see. He'll get tired of you soon, and then we'll all have to pay the price. When it comes time though, don't worry. I'm man enough to defend his family." Lawrence also faced objections from his commanding officer and fellow Rangers. Even his own mother, a Houston socialite of Irish descent, had balked via post at the idea that her youngest son might marry a poor Mexican girl. "You write of love," her final letter said, "but who has asked you whom you love? If the tart has you so bewitched, take her as your lover. I am fully aware that men do this. Your father himself, up to the very day of his death, dabbled in discreet liaisons. But marriage is social strategy, Lawrence. Love and desire are irrelevant. There are many lovely and eligible girls in high society, dear. Yet, do as you will. Just understand this. If you marry that pomper, that strumpet, you will be disinherited. You will not have a cent from me." Lawrence tossed the costly paper on the company campfire, turning his back on his birthright for good. He and Daphne were joined in holy matrimony at the newly erected St. Benedict Catholic Church. In those first joyous months, the newlyweds lived happily in their humble home, and Daphne cared for her family when her husband was on patrol, supplementing his wages by continued work as a laundress. A child was born and then another. Boys, both of them, a perfect blend of mother and father. Lawrence doted on them when he could, but his time away grew longer and longer each year as a bandit raid increased and the Rangers reacted with greater tyranny in response. When news came of lynching near Brownsville, Ovidio snarled with outrage and left his ailing father without a word. Daphne fretted at his absence, but he was nearly 17 years old, able to make his own decisions, no matter how foolish. Tension along the border came to a head in January of 1915. The Rangers' Tom Whitfield arrested young Balicio Ramos, a Mexican customs employee who was purportedly trying to drum up support for an uprising among residents of the valley. In his possession was a copy of the Plan of San Diego, a declaration by revolutionaries in Texas that called for Mexican Americans to rise up on February 20 and retake their entire American Southwest, executing all Anglo males over the age of 16. As lawmen scrambled to squelch a feared civil war, Lawrence found himself under the command of newly arrived Captain Henry Lee Ransom, a man determined to respond to raids with swift and gruesome retribution. Violence spiked as President Woodrow Wilson increased military presence in the Rio Grande Valley to more than 100,000 troops. San Benito became a base of operations for soldiers from Tennessee, Oklahoma, South Dakota National Guards. Together with Texas Rangers, these troops skirmished with rebels up and down the river. Lawrence was continually gone, and Daphne lived every moment with the fear that her beloved might be killed. Her people were rocked by more and more aggression from Anglo lawmen. Hundreds of Mexican Americans went missing or were killed. The Spanish-speaking community withdrew even further from Daphne, treating her as a sort of parish who had betrayed them all. Lawrence showed little sympathy. "We don't know who's with the bandits, Daphne. The officers don't want to take a risk. Anyone who seems like they're against us is going to pay the price. It's better if you just stay away from them. You don't have to do laundry. I can support us." And he was off again on patrol. Cold northern air had just begun to filter into the valley when a neighbor came running to tell Daphne the news. Bandits had used a wired cable to derail the night train to Brownsville, sending it plummeting into a ditch just 10 miles away, close to Olmito, near Tandy Ranch. The engineer had died, and 2 passengers had been murdered before the attackers had made off with stolen goods, setting the cars aflame behind them. But the tragedy was just the beginning of the horror for Daphne Bautista Woods. Her sister Gertrudis came to her, tears streaming, and broke her heart. Deputy Sheriff John Peavy, Gertrudis explained between sobs, had arrived at the train wreck and joined up with the Rangers company to which Lawrence was assigned. The men had begun to track the bandits, finding stolen property tossed aside along their escape route, down to where they had crossed into the river into Mexico near the Villanueva Ranch. Frustrated that the revolutionaries had escaped, the lawmen had visited Tandy Ranch and on Captain Ramson's orders had taken 10 Mexican Americans into custody on suspicions of collusion. 4 of them had been hanged on the spot. 6 were shot by Rangers as they attempted to flee. Among these was Ovidio Bautista, Daphne's only brother. When Lawrence finally returned the following day, he found her inconsolable. What he had to say only worsened matters. "I must leave, Daphne. Everyone's suspicious of me. My own brother-in-law in cahoots with the bandits. Ransom is having me transferred. You expect me to just walk away from my family at a time like this?" she demanded between sobs. "You don't understand. You're not coming. I got to distance myself from you all." "What? What about your sons? Where are you going?" Lawrence paused, glancing away from her. Tears graced his face. "Back to Houston." "Houston? With your mother? But she..." "Oh my God, Lawrence, you're really leaving me, aren't you? Look, when things calm down, I'll come back down to visit the boys. In the meantime, I'll send you money and things. But you and me, we just can't make it in this environment." "I don't want you to send me anything," Daphne sobbed, falling to her knees and clutched his jacket. "I want a husband, a father for my children. Don't do this, Lawrence. You don't need to be a ranger. You don't have to abandon me and your sons. Look at them. What life will they have without you? We're as good as dead once you're gone." "Don't be stupid," Lawrence replied angrily. "You'll have a perfectly fine life. Every material thing you could ask for, I'll give to you." "I don't want. Damn it. Don't you understand? I was the one who killed him. I had no choice. Ransom's orders. At the moment, as the world came apart around her, Daphne watched her husband simply put on his hat and leave without another word. Despair and loss and rage swirled within her like an unescapable Charybdis. Her sons played and laughed, oblivious to the cruelty of their father. He was often gone. They thought nothing of it. She wept beside them, but they paid her no heed. After a while, she wiped her eyes and nodded briskly. Then she loaded up the donkey with 2 bales of clothing and set the squirming boys upon its back. "Come on," she said with a strange smile. "Mama has to do some laundry." At the edge of the Oxbow Lake, she set them down on the sparse grass, looking listlessly at the surface between the gray firmament of the skies were duly reflected. "I hate him. He took everything from me. Now I'll take everything I can from him as well," she thought. "All right, time to get to work," she said loudly, calm like all suicides get before they take their lives. "But first, we're going to take a little swim." "But Mama, it's too cold," said the eldest, a red-haired cherub of 3.5 years. "That's all right, mijo," Daphne replied. "The Virgin will keep us warm." And she led her children down into the chilly water, held their heads under, and blinked away tears as they slowly stopped struggling and passed into the arms of baby Jesus. Then she began wading deeper into the water to join them. Lawrence, waiting for the train, felt something tug painfully at his chest, leaving his meager luggage on the platform. He rushed to his empty home and then down to the Resaca de los Fresnos, where with a breathed cry he discovered the bodies of his sons bobbing in the water. There was no sign of Daphne's corpse. The authorities decided she must have fled to Mexico, a murderer like her bandit brother. But no, there, at the bottom of the lake, Daphne was undergoing a metamorphosis. Her body sank into the muck, her raving soul trapped within by the shroud of suicide until the silent howl of her heart suffused every atom and transformed her into a rabid, avenging ghoul that clambered from the wind-rippled water beneath a baleful moon. Lawrence, broken by loss and guilt, began to drink heavily to forget his pain, and though his mother reinstated him in her will before she died, he lost most of his inheritance gambling. One night, drunk and screaming at the heavens for an explanation, as he stumbled along the tracks near Olmito, Lawrence was struck by a train and killed instantly. Once their long grieving was at an end, the 4 younger Bautista girls took over Daphne's laundry work. Their father's illness and grief had ruined him, so they accepted as many clients as possible, scrubbing at clothes well past dusk at the shore of the lake. The youngest 2 often grew weary and would wander along the bank, plunking rocks into the water and singing children's songs, while their elder sisters beat out stains beneath the stars. One evening, as they wandered farther than ever before, they came across a strange figure standing in their way, dripping water, hair tangled and wild. It was a woman, pale as the moon. She was weeping uncontrollably, sobs hiking violently in her chest. As her hollowed eyes fell upon the girls, she lifted hands like claws, tipped in the long and pointed nails of the dead. "Where are they?" she howled, her face twisting with rage and sorrow. "Where are my family? Where are my children?" Then, rushing forward with spectacular speed, she seized the sisters she no longer knew and plunged into the lake with the girls in her arms. Those deaths were not the end. They were only the beginning. Even now, if you walk alone in the dead of night, you might happen to see either Daphne or Lawrence. At least you may hear their sobbing and screaming. Lawrence has been condemned to walk the railroad tracks of the valley forever in search of his wife. Daphne still wanders along the shores of the lake looking for her children as she weeps, forever inconsolable. Neither of them will ever find what they were looking for, but if La Llorona happens to find you there at the Resaca's edge, she just might mistake you for one of her children and drag you down into the watery black depths. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the Wailing Woman of San Benito. At least one iteration of the story. I mean, I've never heard this version of it. I think I've heard a version where it's kind of about the same thing. Just that it's just like a regular though Mexican family, and the father leaves her and the children. She's like sad because no one can take care of her and the kids, so she goes and does the same thing and drowns them, and so on and so forth. But I mean, it's said in the lore and the history. I mean, there's like so many interpretations of this story, and apparently there's like a woman in white, like I've said in a previous video, like all around the world. And from a podcast I heard recently, apparently a woman in white can stand for many things, especially the demon mother herself, Lilith. So there's that. I mean, maybe we can get into more lore about these different types of demons and whatever entities that are out there. I'm looking forward to getting into more stuff like that. But for now, I just want to try to stick to the stories from my area, and then have a discussion on some of these things. I know a lot of you, or some of you, have commented to at least have like a discussion about certain things, or how to explain how Kat like how she got this, I guess, way of being, like being sensitive, and how does it work, and how do you know. But yeah, on the next one we'll definitely go into all that for you guys. And if you guys have any other topics you guys want to know about, just go ahead and comment down below. Engage with us. The more we engage, the more better this all becomes as a community. So I just want to thank everyone for commenting, liking, and subscribing. I appreciate everyone. We're at, I believe, 96 subscribers, so we just need 4 more, guys, and we hit that 100. And I'll tell you, I know I promised in the previous video, tell you a little bit about myself and the dreams that I've had about the world ending and whatnot. I said once we get to 100 subscribers, I'll definitely go ahead and get into those stories. Anyways, thank you guys. See you later.